Hi Tamers! Cipanku has been out for around 4 months now, and after a multitude of balance patches, the current meta feels really diverse and well balanced. That being said, there are a couple TEMs that stand out above the rest, and whether you're into competitive PvP or just trying to win dojo rematches, you'll be better off by learning about and using these TEMs to your advantage. So let's talk about my picks for the top 5 TEMs of patch 0.7.6, how they're played, and why they work so well in the current metagame. First up is Tulcan. The biggest change of the most recent balance patch is the nerf to Oshiera. Because they no longer learn Aquatic Whirlwind, the threat of a high priority water move on turn 1 is gone from the metagame, which allows certain fire and earth TEMs to be more viable. Tulcan was already strong last patch, but unless you were running the heater trait to reduce Oshiera's damage, you wouldn't be able to survive an Aquatic Whirlwind without investing heavily into bulk. Now that Tulcan doesn't have to worry about being one-shot on turn 1 by Oshiera, the Pyromaniac trait is more viable and more safe than it was before, and even though Tulcan's Fiery Soul was nerfed in a recent patch as well, if you run Pyromaniac, Max Special Attack, and Fire Chip, you can still deal some great damage with the technique. And while dealing great damage, the utility you get from a high priority technique that applies burn is tremendous. The damage reduction from burn allows you to survive hits from pretty much any TEM you outspeed as long as they aren't immune to it. And while you're now able to run Pyromaniac without fear of Oshiera, the heater trait is still a great option if you want additional damage reduction during turns where you want Tulcan's partner to set up for a sweep or just make a winning trade to gain some momentum. Tulcan is just all around a great TEM, and if you're looking for a fast wind or fire type for your team, you can't go wrong. Next, let's talk about Amphatyr. Amphatyr originally found its place in the meta as a viable check to Oshiera, but even after the Water Pony was nerfed and the damage from Plague was reduced, it's still relevant in the current metagame. Amphatyr's main selling point has always been its speed. It's able to outspeed most matchups, and because of its wide coverage, outtrade most matchups. Although its base special attack isn't the highest, it's able to buff itself and allies with sparks, and exhaust and trap enemies with Plague, applying pressure in different ways throughout the game. Not to mention, its access to the Relax trait makes it very difficult to kill. Coupled with the evasion from Bright Beam, you have a TEM that is very fast, has a ton of options for damage and support, and will potentially heal itself if you aren't doubling into it each turn. And it has a ton of flexibility as far as builds go. Whether you want a special attacker or bulky spark support, Amphatyr can fit on almost any team that needs fast electric or nature coverage. Next, we have Mushook. This TEM, with its trait Parrier, is the tankiest physical wall in the game, able to shrug off even moves it's weak to with no problems if they're physical, and with a good amount of special defense investment and items like Coat and Double Screen, he can stick around for multiple turns no matter what you throw at it. To synergize with its insane bulk, Mushook uses both Tenderness and Perfect Jab to gain advantage the longer it stays on the board, weakening physical sweepers and softening physical walls, eventually outtrading them with raw staying power. And it has reliable stab moves when you need to secure a kill. Wastewater, which has high base damage and always deals at least 12% if the TEM isn't immune to being poisoned, and Uppercut, which is a low-cost melee move to help Mushook outtrade enemy Vulffys and 2-Rocks. It also has access to Cage to lock in favorable matchups, which for Mushook is pretty much any physical attacker. Mushook can fit on pretty much any team that can use a bulky support, especially if you have physical sweepers that can appreciate a Perfect Jab wall breaker. Our fourth TEM is Vulffy. This little guy has so much going for it. First of all, it's the original Handcuffs Plague user, and compared to Amphatyr has a much better special attack stat. Whether you invest heavily into damage or not, a high priority exhaustion and trapping move is always threatening, especially in the current stamina-hungry meta. Vulffy is flexible enough to be built as a fast special attacker or a wall, making use of its evasion through bush and regen through Lifeful Sap to stay relevant in the game as long as possible. Vulffy's potential bulk is further increased by its trait, which allows it to dodge any team-wide move, and its unique typing, which makes it only weak to melee TEMs. However, if you look at the melee TEMs currently in the game, and what melee techniques they actually learn, you can see that most of them are either low base damage or have a hold, meaning Vulffy can either tank 1 or 2 hits from them or dodge the ones with hold using bush. And if there's ever an unfavorable matchup, Vulffy has a lot of freedom to switch out, because Team Elusive prevents it from being trapped by Cage, and access to Bush can purge off any trap status you do get from rival handcuff users. We'll have to see what kind of melee TEMs get released in the Arbory update, but until then, Vulffy's here to stay. And last but not least, we have Yowlar. Even after multiple nerfs, Yowlar's still an absolute beast. He has great bulk, and his damage is ridiculously high because of Oshi-Dashi and Savage Suplex's high base damage, multiplied by Show Off and Comebacker. He's arguably the best partner for Kinu, or any Stonewall or Sacrifice support, because any defensive buffs you put on him have insane value thanks to his self-healing ability, and the more the opponent tries to whittle Yowlar down, without being able to outright kill it, the more damage it will put out with Comebacker. Yowlar has a pretty weak turn 1, limited usually to just Show Off, and it can't hibernate until the end of turn 3, so the opponent has a 3-turn clock to deal with Yowlar. The main reason I put Yowlar on this list is because there are only a few mental TEMs in the game right now that can threaten Yowlar. Until Arbory comes out and we get a wider selection of mental TEMs, I feel like Yowlar is in a really strong state at the moment. And that's all 5 TEMs. But before we end the video, I have a few honorable mentions. First is Nagaise. Nagaise with Deceit Aura is undoubtedly good. Its very existence warrants a respect ban by most aggro teams. Even after the nerfs to Deceit Aura, I would argue that Nagaise has more tools to succeed than it did in the Kisiwa format. Things like Reactive Vial prevent it from dying from most double-ins, and Electric Custodian Rhynet can protect it while it sets up in the face of electric TEMs. The main reason I didn't want to put Nagaise in the top 5 with the others is because it's such a common first ban, you could just build a speedy aggro team and never have to actually worry about it. I personally don't like the just ban it argument for TEMs that are really powerful, but Nagaise is the exception. There are counters to Nagaise, but slow electric TEMs don't fit on every team, making it more reasonable to auto-ban Nagaise than always dedicate a counter to it on your team. Speaking of Nagaise counters, our second honorable mention goes to Scaravolt. As far as raw damage and bulk goes, it's hard to compete with half-full Scaravolt. This TEM can take so much damage and outtrade any TEM that doesn't resist electric, and the longer the game goes on, Scaravolt is happy to switch in and out to regain health with Baton Pass. I have a whole video dedicated to him, and of course I think he's incredibly strong. The main reason I put Scaravolt as an honorable mention instead is after the nerf to Ashera and the introduction of Gravel Bag, we're starting to see a lot more earth types pop up in the meta. Two-Rock, Volcrane, Sizemunch, Mudrid, and even Gario are all growing in popularity and all have the potential to just Oko Scaravolt before it gets to play. So Scaravolt is sort of in the same boat as Nagaise. You either need to build to beat it or respect it in the ban phase, but in my opinion it's a lot easier to prepare for than Nagaise. And that's all for the list. So, what did you think? Like I said before, the current meta feels really good, so there aren't a ton of overpowered TEMs. These are just the ones I found to be particularly good at the moment. But if I left out a TEM you think is truly OP, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching! My name is Blunk, and I make temtem content for YouTube. If you like this video, thanks! Stay tuned for more, and have a nice day.